Hello guys and welcome to a new Wargame video today by me, Vulcan. Today I'm showing you a 4 versus 4 on 3 Mile Island. Now in this particular game I am playing with Captain, Flappy, Val and of course myself on the NATO side. And on Pact we have Fiat Lux, Adref, Mahatma Gandhi and Wargame XD. Now my particular deck is a All Nations Cat B deck. I will leave a link to a screenshot of my deck in the description because I have been asked previously if people could see my decks, and I guess that's the best way to do it, is just me take a screenshot of it and leave it for you to go look for yourself. Now feel free to copy the deck. It's not anything amazing and it's not something I would recommend using all the time, but it does give you insight into gameplay that is made possible by weaker units. Because you have to make use of lower tier armor and also lower tier ATGMs. So you've got to know where to place them, how to use them effectively in order for them to take out heavy packed armor, which is probably the biggest counter to this deck. So if somebody came along with loads of T-80Us, they would just steamroll you because your Leopard 2s won't stand up to them, neither will your M1 Abrams, which are both tanks that I have on this deck. Then the HGM Milan F1s, which I have, also aren't really efficient enough to deal with them. So yeah, it was an interesting game, and that is one of the reasons I chose to show it to you today. I make a lot of mistakes, I get a lot of units killed, my KD isn't great, but it's all in learning. And by using this deck, it honestly makes it a much bigger challenge to stay positive. So, Val's going to be taking the left, Juliet and India. Then we have Captain, who's going to be focusing on capturing Lima early on. Myself and Flappy on the right are going to be taking Mike and Hotel. So you can see what I brought in so far. I've got 2 MD Jupiters with Recon Infantry, 2 Gazelle Cannons, I've got these 2 M577Gs, 1 Leopard 2, 2 Marder Roland 2s, and a Flak Panzer Gepard. Then I've got a HKP-6A Recon Helicopter, which is a Swedish Recon Helicopter. Then I've got 2 Marder 1A1s with Panzer Grenadiers, and the idea of those are that they're going to go to Lima and help out there. Now I actually micromanaged them pretty early on by just leaving them in the Lima sector without doing anything with them. It was only when I was pointed that out that I realised they were just sitting there. Now on the right side I've got 4 VABs. These have HGM Milan F1s in them, and the reason I brought these in is to rush up to these 2 building compounds up here. There's actually 3 building compounds, but I've left one empty for the TGB M42s, which are carrying the Swedish AA units. I think it's the LVGRP. I'm not mistaken, but I'm not entirely sure. Now in the middle, Flappy's bringing in some Drakens to attack this Delphin with the help of these OH-58CS. They are shooting those down. Good old anti-air helicopters with stingers. An interesting unit to bring onto the battlefield. But you can see that these Drakens come in very handy when shooting down all these Mi-8Ts that are trying to advance onto the Delta sector. The Drakens aren't actually getting too much against them, and are managing to shoot down these Aviair S-105s very easily. So an awesome use of the J-35 Drakens there, especially with the lack of AA over this sector, these Pragas not being very effective at all. So now I'm having a look around. I've got my 2 Gazelle Cannons moving up across Foxtrot to see if there's anything here. They haven't captured it yet, but they do bump into 4 BTR 80s. But I do have to pull them back out of machine gun range just to avoid them getting damaged too much. I've already deployed my 4 VABs on the right. You can see they've dropped off the HGM Milan F1 teams, and my LVGRP RBS 70s are now in place there as well. So the VABs I basically tell to continue up towards this sector, and they are busy harassing this Ural, which has gone a bit too far forwards. So I'm basically trying to destroy that, and hopefully the Spetsnaz VMF as well. The Milans come in and destroy the vehicle which was carrying the VMF, and then my VABs continue to pepper the area. And with the help of the TG M42s, I eventually managed to kill that recon squad. So that's a good blow for me to do at the start of the game. And in the middle here, Flappy and Captain have successfully captured their side of Lima. We've managed to get a command vehicle into Mike, and I've got one spare in Hotel due to a miscommunication at the beginning of the game. So this wasted a lot of points for me, and I probably could have afforded like another Leopard 2, which would have been really useful. But they've got a T80 BV. Now I'm actually going to start setting this to my point of view so we can see what is going on from our perspective. So I've got some Fernspar, which came in those MD Jupiters. I've got one in this hedge line here, and I've got one at the edge of this forest. And then I've got 2 Marder Roland 2s. One's already been destroyed due to micromanagement. I basically completely forgot when it drove straight past my Leopard 2 towards the enemy, and it got itself killed very quickly. So I had to retreat my Leopard 2, and I've only got 1 Marder Roland 2 left at the beginning of the game. I brought up a AH-1E Cobra in order to counter this T80 BV. It flies a bit too far forwards, and unfortunately takes a lot of flak from the Tunguska. So I'm basically trying to get it behind forest cover so that the Tunguska loses tracking. Then on this side you can see that the T80 BV that was moving across got hit by quite a few HGMs, but didn't die. These HGM Milan F1s only have 17 AP power, which isn't great against the huge front armor of a T80 BV. But either way, my HGM Milan F1s are doing their best to try and take out some of the other support units, and I'm just trying to retreat this AH-1E Cobra to avoid it getting destroyed. Now something that these HGM Milan F1s are reasonably good against is lighter armor. So for example, these T55 AM2s, a couple of missiles from a Milan F1 team will destroy them. However, against heavier units, that will not be the case. So I'm trying to get my Flak Panzer Gepard out of there because I basically moved it a bit too far forwards. Another missed micromanagement. It was full of them this game. And on the left, in the centre part, I've got the Panzer Grenadiers that I've now finally decided to drop off out of the Marder 1A1s and kill off the remaining units here with the help of Captain's Jaegers. So in the meantime, I brought in another Marder Roland 2, another couple of them to control the airspace in this area. We're currently +2 because what's happened is we've captured Lima and they have not, because basically at this point they retreat their command vehicle across the bridge to the back of Delta. Now this was probably the turning point in this battle. Because we'd managed to kill all their infantry on the centre island, it basically gave us a foothold in order to contest Delta. And by doing so, we would always be +2 ahead. Now, meantime, on the right, I've got a Leopard 2 I brought in. And unfortunately, due to the lack of front armour on the Leopard 2 compared to the Leopard 2A4, these BMPs actually go to work on my tank. And they have the Conker's missile system, which is reasonably powerful and is definitely a big threat. But I've brought up an AH-1E Cobra, and using its low amount of HGMs, I'm trying to take out as many of these BMP 1Ps as I can before they start retreating. I've also got my rover Pinky here to provide the exceptional recon provided to actually spot these BMP 1Ps in the first place. And I've also brought in an MD Jupiter and a Man Catty to resupply these HGM Milan F1s so that they can continue firing on the APCs. Now my Leopard 2 on this road gets engaged by a T-80 BV at max range. The Leopard 2 can't even engage it from that range. Now by GamerXD has left at this point, which does give us a reasonably unfair advantage, I guess, in terms of micromanagement, but because of the way that the map's spaced out, there is kind of like one person goes down the middle, one goes on the right, one goes on the left, then it's not too hard to micro, so I wasn't too sorry about that. Now, at this point, we've pushed further on, they've recaptured Delta, but we are taking a huge foothold on this side of the sector. I've got my Gazelle cannons coming over to give fire support in the centre, meanwhile just bolstering my defences on the right. Now, where is this M577G going? Now, since I brought in a spare CV at the start of the game, I decided to start moving it towards Delta, and the idea was that we would contest this sector and give us that lead I was talking about. So I was going to place it right in the centre of these two smokestacks, and you'll see that as soon as it gets there, it's basically invisible. It's not technically hidden like it is in a forest, for example, but because it's out of line of sight and there's like a huge building in front of it, it's pretty hard to spot unless you get in the right angle. Now, seeing this huge amount of BMPs, I decided to bring in 3 AH-20 Cobras. Now, one was already on the map due to it being one of those ones that faced off against the BMP 1Ps on the right. But my Gazelle cannons get here and start firing free shots onto the BMP 1s. Meanwhile, on the right, the enemy brings in 2 Su-24s, and you probably wonder why they didn't fire any shots. Well, I actually microed my Marder Roland 2s in order to avoid them getting attacked by seed missile rockets. So this is pretty common knowledge now, but for those of you who don't know, seed missiles can be voided by turning off the radar AA. Like if you click on the bottom to turn off the weapon system, you can stop a seed missile hitting it, and they will lose tracking altogether. Now, unfortunately, my AH-20 Cobras on this side didn't last too long, and I did lose all 3 of them, but the Gazelle cannons from max range have managed to destroy about 6 BMPs. See, they're just going to work on that last one there. Unfortunately, an Avia does come in and kind of ruin their day, and I begin to retreat the one that survived. So, unfortunately, on the right, after my Marder Roland 2 did shoot down those Su-24s, it did get HGM'd by the T-80 BV. Meanwhile, on this side, we got Flappy bringing in his SK-60Bs, and they managed to HGM a Tunguska that was sitting towards the front of Foxtrot. Now, due to the success of my Gazelle cannons, I actually bring in my AH-20 Cobra to sit in a similar position and fire off its HGMs towards those BMPs. It uses up all its tow missiles, and then I send it back to base to resupply. Now I've got my M577G coming up to this sector. We're about 12 minutes into the game, and this is the point where we are given a huge advantage. You can see he sneaks just into the back of the sector, just behind the smokestack, You would literally have to be at like a 90-degree angle in order to spot that, but there is buildings in the way on this side, so you can't recon it from this side of the river, and there's also buildings on this side, so you wouldn't be able to recon it from this side of the river either. And therefore, you would need to be right next to it in order to know it's there. Now that neutralizes Delta, because having one CV of both sides in the same command point will neutralize it. And thus we are at a +2 advantage because they don't control Delta anymore. Because this is one map that's pretty symmetrical actually. You can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sectors that are reasonably contested. 2 sectors at the back for both sides. That's the same on both sides of the map. It's basically a symmetrical map. But the middle island is really where you can make the difference in the conquest game. The person who controls the center sector will win the game majority of the time. And although it's technically 2 sectors, I like this one island is what I'm really talking about. If you control the island, you win. Now, because we control the middle island, it's going to force the enemy to try other tactics. We've got our 2K22M Tunguska coming up on the left here. I was a bit concerned about where that was trying to go, but looks like it's turning off towards the tree line over here. But I'm busy reinforcing my lines. So I've got Leopard 2 hiding in the back of this forest, ready to engage any armor that comes too close. I've got my Flak Panzer Gepard and Marder Roland 2s sitting around waiting to shoot down unsuspecting air targets. I've retreated this Marder Roland 2 from its original position to hide in this tree line instead of further forward so that it doesn't get HGM sniped. And now I've basically got a sort of band of AA here that should help me throughout the game. So, my SDRV 103Bs are now coming into the battle. These are another one of the tanks I've got on my deck. They're very, very effective. Basically, what I do is I split them up and I space them out at the back of the forest. Now the idea is that if an enemy tried to attack me, they wouldn't see the SDRV 103Bs until they were very close range. Now this works incredibly in the SDRV's favour. And the reason for this is because the SDRVs have a very high rate of fire. They will fire almost instantly and they will continue firing very fast. And this can be horrific against enemy armor at medium range. Now on the right, a 2K22M Tunguska tries to make a run for it and does just about manage to get into this hedge line quickly. However, as he moves it out, an HGM Milan does manage to hit it in the front armor. Unfortunately, that armor is not enough, and that was a one-shot kill. Now, meanwhile, we have Val doing a superb job at Bravo, basically holding this command reinforcement point. So the enemy controls Bravo, and you can see that they can reinforce from this area. Val has decided to bring in Royal Marines and Warriors to basically sit by that with the help of these Lynx AH-7 20mm cannons to just destroy anything that comes in as reinforcement there. Now I brought in 4 AMX-13 Harpoons. These were sort of recon, but also intended to try and take out the BMP-1Ps that I saw there earlier. Now what I hadn't realised was that he had since reinforced with this T-64BM, and that is basically what destroyed all 4 of those AMX-13 Harpoons before they could do anything. Now due to artillery killing one of my HGM Milan F1 teams, I did have to reinforce that. I've got to bring out the HGM Milan F1 and then regroup them and then send them back into the building. That will do that nicely. If you would ever want to reinforce your infantry squads in building, that's how you've got to do it. Now, that also brings up another point. If you are struggling against HGMs bunkered down in buildings. They are super susceptible to artillery. Now what just came in on this side was actually a T-80U. I unfortunately missed it, but you can see amongst all these wrecks, these are very valuable tanks that are being instantly sniped by these Fusiliers and Warriors. And the reason the Warriors are very effective is because the Warriors actually have 3 AP power. At this close range, the accuracy isn't too much of a concern, so they are going to rip to shreds those vehicles with those kinetic rounds from the autocannon. So now I've got T-72Bs advancing on the right. I can see these coming, they're very powerful tanks. Like I was saying, heavy armor completely counters this deck. So I'm very worried, and I have reinforced this side with 4 HGM Milan F1 teams, with the support of a Rover Pinky, which is providing the exceptional recon, which is spotting these T-72Bs. Then after I've dropped those off, I actually send the VABs to the centre to help out there, because it's unlikely that the VABs at long range would be effective to use. Now that's another point I would like to bring up, is that if you have VABs or any machine gun APCs, make sure you use them to support your infantry in different areas, even if it isn't necessarily the troops that they originally came in with. It's very important to do that. Now here you can see my AH-1E Cobra. I've turned off its Hydra rocket pods and the Vulcan machine gun, and the reason for this is so it fires its HGMs at max range without trying to get in range to fire its rockets. That's another small tip for dealing with helicopters with multi-ordnance. So my HGM Milan F1s are in position. I'm bringing in a couple of VABs extra now with HGM Milans to press into this building again, because artillery killed the squads. I'm also bringing in a couple of Marder 1A1s, and with the advance of these Motor Strelki, I am bringing forwards a UH-1C Heavy Hog. Now the Heavy Hog has a large amount of swarm rockets and a grenade launcher sitting on the front of it, which can be very useful. Now on this side you can see my Marder 1A1s, they start heading up this road. I quickly take them round the opposite direction. But these Heavy Hogs that are brought in to take out these Motor Strelki have just been taken down by the BRDM-2 Strela 1M. Now fortunately, my AH-1E Cobra with its Hydra rockets does take out the AA very quickly. That basically leaves these BMP-1Ps and the T-72Bs very vulnerable. Because he didn't bring enough AA, it basically gives Flappy's Vigan a chance to come in and just kill loads of units. But also my AH-1E Cobra just sits there and fires off all its HGMs uncontested. Because it's run out of ammo, I have to bring in another AH-1E Cobra to finish the job. But we managed to take out 2 BRM-1s there. Now these are the exceptional recon units of the pack side, and it basically left the T-72 blind on the right, and on the left they pushed it forwards in order to scout my positions. Now they got it killed, and now if they were to attack with these Motor Strelki, which is what they were planning to do, they don't know where my men are. My AH-1E Cobra finishes off this T-72B on the right, and now the enemy, with us being at an 80% lead, are forced to push on our side. So you can see these STRV 103Bs are now coming into effect. I was only revealing one of them to begin with, and you can see that that has definitely caught them out. They've moved forward these Motor Strelki thinking that I only had one tank firing on this side of the map. These T-55 AM2s also unfortunately victim to this surprise attack. So this one was showing itself. I had 2 in the back, I moved them forwards, caught out all their men. Now they can't really run back at this point, they're left out in the open, so my SDRV 103Bs with their 15 rounds per minute rate of fire are just going to tear apart that infantry squad with the help of these Panzer Grenadiers once they get into range. Now meanwhile, Flappy is unfortunately being hit by some HGMs in the side armour on these STRV 103Bs, but does manage to get them down the hill in time and help me finish off those Menschelki. Now in the centre here we got T-62s advancing, but they're getting bombed. And in the centre my VABs are finally getting here to just push up, see what damage they can do, but pretty much at this point we have won the game. So Val did a superb job of basically stunting their reinforcements on this side, and that allowed them to capture Bravo, put us in a superb advantage, and thus we won the game. So 22 minutes and 43 seconds long. My KD, like I said, wasn't great. 1,456 kills to 1,083 losses. Not the best I've ever done, but Val did exceptionally with 2,804 kills to 934 losses. Captain did just as well, especially in the centre sector, and Flappy the same. 1,718 kills to 561 losses, and Flappy 1,611 kills to 240 losses. It was a pretty decisive game, but the reason I showed it to you was to point out the mistakes. The ways to honestly counter HGMs in buildings is just to arty them. We've got helicopters being extremely effective still, especially in this particular deck, against that packed heavy armor as soon as you take out the AA. And the use of taking out recon to make attacks completely ineffective. Now, the combination of all those sort of tactics allowed us to win this game resoundingly, and cutting off their supply and all that kind of thing really helped us as we went along. So hopefully, although it was a short game, there was a lot to pick up on, and it's unfortunate that it honestly didn't last longer. I guess I could have put it slower speed, but I honestly don't like recording in slower speed because it can get a bit tedious. But either way, hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Now, if we scroll down, we can have a look at some of the good units. We've got this one HGM Milan F1 team getting one T-80BV kill, two 2K22M Tunguska kills, BMP1, BTR T-80, and a T-55AM2 kill. That's one HGM Milan F1 team. Now the F1 team is the one with only 17 AP power. Well, let's be honest, that is a lot of kills for that type of unit, especially considering the HGM Milan F1 costs about 15 points to bring in. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.